Hello students, I hope you all are fine. Today we are going to start chapter 10 Respiration in Organisms. In this chapter we will study about respiration, aerobic and anaerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration in muscles, external respiration that is breathing, and respiration in other animals and respiration in plants. Now first we will discuss about respiration. We know that all living organisms they need energy to carry out their life processes, and they get this energy from the food they eat. We also need energy to do all our activities, and we get this energy from the food we eat. So respiration is the process of taking in oxygen, using it for the release of energy by breakdown of food, and eliminating the waste products like carbon dioxide and water. And this respiration involves steps: external respiration, which is also known as breathing, and internal respiration, which is called cellular respiration. Now let us discuss about external respiration first. External respiration is also known as breathing. It is the process of taking in air rich in oxygen and giving out air rich in carbon dioxide by the living organism with the help of their respiratory organs. Like we have lungs for this process. So this is the process of taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. And this is also known as external respiration or breathing. Now let us discuss about internal respiration. Internal respiration is the process of breakdown of food or glucose in the cells with the release of energy. Okay, and this is also known as cellular respiration. Why it is known as cellular respiration? Because it takes place in cells of our body. And this internal respiration or cellular respiration is also of two types: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Respiration generally takes place in the presence of oxygen, but sometimes it takes place in the absence of oxygen. So on the basis of whether oxygen is present or not, then it can be divided into two categories: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Now first we will discuss about aerobic respiration. As we have already discussed that respiration can be in the presence of oxygen or in the absence of oxygen. So the respiration which takes place in the presence of oxygen is called aerobic respiration. So we can define it as breakdown of food or glucose into carbon dioxide and water to release energy using oxygen is called aerobic respiration. So in this type of respiration, oxygen is used. So this can be represented by the following equation, which is C6H12O6 means glucose combined together with oxygen, 6 molecules of oxygen, and then it gives carbon dioxide 6CO2 and water 6H2O and energy. Means this type of respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen. Glucose or food is broken down with the help of oxygen, and then carbon dioxide, water and energy is released. So this is aerobic respiration. Now next is anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen. So generally respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen only, but in few organisms like yeast and bacteria, respiration can be anaerobic respiration also. Means it takes place without oxygen. Oxygen is not used in this respiration. Okay, so this is the breakdown of food into alcohol and carbon dioxide with the release of energy without the use of oxygen. So in this type of respiration, energy is released, carbon dioxide is released, and alcohol is formed. and no oxygen is used. And these type of organisms which carry out anaerobic respiration, they are known as anaerobes. And amount of energy given out in this type of respiration is very less as compared to energy released in aerobic respiration, because it takes place in absence of oxygen. Now let us discuss differences between aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So we can differentiate these respiration on the basis of some parameters. So first parameter is presence of oxygen. So in aerobic respiration, oxygen is required, means it takes place in the presence of oxygen, and anaerobic respiration, it takes place in the absence of oxygen. Then next parameter is breakdown of food. In aerobic respiration, complete breakdown of food takes place, and in an anaerobic respiration, incomplete breakdown of food takes place. And end products, the end products are carbon dioxide and water in aerobic respiration, and in anaerobic respiration, the end products are carbon dioxide and alcohol. And amount of energy released, in aerobic respiration, large amount of energy is released, and in anaerobic respiration, small amount of energy is released. Now next we will discuss about anaerobic respiration in muscles. Sometimes our muscle cells can also respire anaerobically. Anaerobically means without oxygen, but it is only for short period of time. So you must have observed that during heavy exercise, sometimes you get muscle cramps. So the reason behind these muscle cramps is anaerobic respiration. So what happens in this case, when we do any heavy exercise, or when we do fast running or cycling, so during this time the demand for energy is high, but the supply of oxygen is less. So we can say, demand to fulfill the demand of extra energy, anaerobic respiration takes place in our muscle cells, and this anaerobic respiration takes place in absence of oxygen. So in this case, food or glucose breaks down into lactic acid and releases some energy. So this can be shown with the help of this equation. Glucose breaks down into lactic acid and energy. So in this case, energy is released without oxygen. So this is the reason why we get muscle cramps after doing heavy exercise or cycling. So in this case, the muscle cramps occur when muscle cells respire anaerobically, and in this, the partial breakdown of glucose produces lactic acid. So the accumulation of lactic acid in the muscle cells causes muscle cramps, and we can get relief from the muscle cramps after hot water bath. So why we take hot water bath or massage after muscle cramps? Because this increases the blood circulation in the cells or in the muscles, and as a result, the supply of oxygen to the muscle cells increases. And this increase in the supply of oxygen results in complete breakdown of lactic acid, and then it releases carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so this is how anaerobic respiration takes place in muscles. Now let us discuss about breathing or external respiration. We know that we breathe through our nose, and sometimes we breathe through our mouth also, but we cannot hold our breath even for a minute. So all living organisms, they breathe, they inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. So this breathing is a continuous process, and it takes place throughout our life, means it takes place in organisms throughout their life. So breathing involves two steps, inhalation and exhalation. So the taking of air rich in oxygen into the body is called inhalation, and giving out of air rich in carbon dioxide outside the body is called exhalation. So we can say breathing involves two steps, inhalation and exhalation, and this is a continuous process which goes on throughout our life. Okay, now next we will discuss about breathing rate. The number of times a person breathes in a minute is called breathing rate. This you can find out if we do some activity, or if we do some exercise, or if we are running, or if we are walking with, to our breathing rate increases. Why it increases? Because during heavy exercise or during any physical activity, our body requires more oxygen. So to get more oxygen, our breathing rate increases. So generally we breathe, or adult human being, when adult human being is at rest, he breathes 12 to 18 times a minute. And when we do any exercise, then this breathing rate increases up to 25 times per minute. Okay, so this breathing rate increases because during exercise or during any physical activity, we need more oxygen. So to get more oxygen is inhaled and supplied to our cells. So this breaks up the food, and then more energy is released for doing activity or for doing physical activity. So we can say breathing rate keeps on changing. It depends upon the activity we are doing. If we are at rest, so breathing rate will be 12 to 18 times a minute, and if we are doing any activity or any heavy exercise, so the breathing rate will increase. It can increase up to 25 times a minute. And when we are sleeping, so that time breathing rate is minimum, because minimum energy is required during sleep. So breathing rate can be different at different time. It depends upon the activity we are doing. So generally if we are at rest, so breathing rate will be 12 to 18 times per minute. Now next we will discuss about how do we breathe. So we breathe with the help of our respiratory system. So this diagram shows respiratory system of our body, and this respiratory system consists of some organs like nose, nostrils, nasal cavity, trachea means windpipe or lungs, bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli. So these are the main organs of our respiratory system. So let us try to understand this mechanism of breathing. So we know that we breathe air with the help of our nose, and our nose has two holes which are called nostrils. So there is a passage in the nose behind the nostrils which is known as nasal cavity. And when we breathe air, when we inhale air, it passes through our nostrils into the nasal cavity. And here the air which goes inside the nasal cavity, it becomes warm and it gets moistened by the mucus secreted by the membrane of the nasal cavity. And dust and other particles present in the air get trapped by the mucus and hair present in the nasal cavity. So we can say from the nasal cavity, the clean, moist and warm air passes into the windpipe or trachea. This trachea branches into two thinner tubes called bronchi, and singular is known as bronchus. So these tubes, bronchi, enters the lungs. Then from the trachea, air goes to bronchi, and then it goes to lungs. After entering the lungs, each bronchus divides to form a large number of smaller tubes. These smaller tubes are called bronchioles, and bronchioles have tiny air sacs at their ends, and these tiny air sacs are called alveoli, and single alveoli are known as alveolus. So each lung contains millions of alveoli, and the walls of alveoli are very thin and surrounded by very thin blood capillaries. So the air from the trachea through the bronchi and bronchioles finally enters the alveoli, and then from the alveoli the oxygen of the air diffuses out from the thin walls of the alveoli into the blood capillaries. Okay, and this oxygen then combines with the hemoglobin in the blood to form oxyhemoglobin and is carried to all the cells of the body. So this is how oxygen reaches lungs. You can understand this process with the help of this diagram. This diagram shows exchange of gases in the alveolus. So we have already discussed that oxygen combines with the hemoglobin in the blood to form oxyhemoglobin, and then it is carried to all the cells of the body. And similarly, carbon dioxide produced by the breakdown of food during internal respiration enters the blood, and then from the blood it goes to alveoli, or blood carries carbon dioxide to the alveoli in the lungs, and from the lungs carbon dioxide is removed along with the air we breathe out. So in this way exchange of gases takes place in the alveolus. So this is the structure of alveolus. You can see how oxygen and carbon dioxide is exchanged through alveolus and with the help of blood vessels. And we can also understand this with the help of this flow chart. So when we breathe air, it goes to nose, and then from the nose it enters to nasal cavity. From the nasal cavities, oxygen goes to larynx, then trachea, then to bronchi, and then to bronchioles, and then to alveoli. And same way carbon dioxide is released from the blood to the alveoli. It is taken by the blood to the alveoli, and then from the alveoli it reaches to bronchioles, and then to bronchi, then to trachea, and to larynx, to nasal cavity, and then it is released out of the nose. So this is how oxygen and carbon dioxide is exchanged with the help of this alveolus. Now let us try to understand how air enters the lungs. You can understand this with the help of this activity. In this activity, a glass bottle or plastic bottle has been taken, in which Y-shaped glass or plastic tube has been placed, and two balloons are attached with this tube, a plastic tube or glass tube. These balloons are showing lungs. These are representing lungs, and two tubes are representing bronchi, and the rubber band which is used to cover the end of the bottle, that represents diaphragm. So let us understand how air enters our lungs. So when we pull the rubber sheet downward, the space inside the bottle increases, and this lowers the pressure, air pressure inside the bottle, and the air from the outside is in through the Y-shaped tube into the balloons. So due to which the balloons get inflated, means it increases in size. Their size increases. So this is how you inhale air during breathing. And when you push the rubber sheet up, the space inside the bottle decreases, and therefore the air pressure inside the bottle increases. So this pushes out the air inside the balloon through the tube, due to which the balloon gets deflated. So their size decreases. So this is how we exhale air during breathing. So the conclusion of this activity is the action of rubber sheet in this activity shows how we inhale and exhale air during breathing with the help of downward and upward movement of the diaphragm. So when the diaphragm moves downward during inhalation, the lungs are filled with air. But when the diaphragm moves upward during exhalation, then the air goes out of the lungs. Now next is what makes us breathe. So we know that when we breathe, our chest rises and falls as we breathe in and out. So how does this happen? So during inhalation, when we breathe in, the intercostal muscles contract and two things happen at the same time. Means the ribs are pushed upward and outward, and the diaphragm contracts and move downward. Okay, and this upward and outward movement of the ribs and the downward movement of the diaphragm increases the space in the chest cavity, and the chest cavity becomes larger and the air enters the lungs. So the lungs get filled up with air and expand. So this is how inhalation occurs. Now during exhalation, when we breathe out, the intercostal muscles relax and two things happen at the same time. So the ribs move downward and inward, and the diaphragm relaxes and moves upward to its original position. So this downward and inward movement of the ribs and the upward movement of the diaphragm decreases the space in the chest cavity, and the chest cavity becomes smaller and the air rushes out of the lungs. So this is how inhalation and exhalation takes place. This is because of the movement of the ribs and movement of the diaphragm. Now let us understand the difference between inhalation and exhalation. So during inhalation, the air rich in oxygen flows into the lungs, and during exhalation, air rich in carbon dioxide is forced out of the lungs. And movement of ribs, during inhalation, ribs move upward and outward, and during exhalation, ribs move downward and inward. And movement of diaphragm contracts and moves downward during inhalation, and diaphragm relaxes and moves upward during exhalation. And volume of chest cavity increases in inhalation, and during exhalation it decreases. And during inhalation, lungs expand and volume increases, and during exhalation, lungs contract and volume decreases. Now next is what we breathe out. We know that we breathe out carbon dioxide, but along with carbon dioxide, we also breathe out water vapor. This we can easily understand with the help of an activity also. Like if we try to exhale or breathe out air from our mouth on a clean mirror, so we can observe that clean mirror become cloudy and we can find some water drops on the mirror. So this shows that water vapor that the air that we breathe out contains water vapor, and these water vapor condenses on the mirror to form tiny droplets of water. So along with carbon dioxide we breathe out water vapor also. So let us see what we breathe out. So table we can see gas, a column gas is given, and then percentage of that gas is given in inhaled air and in exhaled air. So in inhaled air oxygen is 21% and carbon dioxide is 0.04% and water vapor is little. And in exhaled air oxygen is 16.4% and carbon dioxide is 4.4% and water vapor is much, means a lot. So we can say when we breathe out it contains oxygen, carbon dioxide and water vapor, all these things, but the exhaled air contain very less amount of oxygen as compared to inhaled air. Now next is sneezing. Do you know what happens in sneezing? We know that we have various types of unwanted particles in our surrounding, such as smoke, dust, pollen, etc. So when we inhale air, the unwanted particles present in the air get trapped in the hair of the nasal cavity. And however, sometimes these particles may get past the hair in the nasal cavity and they cause irritation of the lining of the nasal cavity, and as a result we sneeze. So sneezing expels these unwanted foreign particles from the inhaled air and the dust-free and clean air enters our body. Now let us discuss differences between combustion and respiration. In this chapter we have studied about respiration and we studied about internal respiration and external respiration. So now let us discuss about differences between combustion and respiration. So on the basis of these parameters like energy, temperature, place and rate, we can differentiate between them. So in combustion, energy is released in a single step in the form of heat and light. And in respiration, energy is released in steps and stored in chemical molecules called ATP. And this is used wherever needed or whenever needed. And next is temperature. It occurs at high temperature, means combustion occurs at high temperature and respiration occurs at body temperature. And combustion can be anywhere, it can occur anywhere, but respiration occurs only in living cells. And combustion, rate of combustion is fast, means it is a process, and respiration is a slow process. Next is differences between breathing and cellular respiration. We have already discussed about breathing and cellular respiration. So now let us try to find out differences between them. So this process in breathing, it is a physical process in which exchange of gases takes place and no chemical reaction takes place. And cellular respiration, it is a biochemical process in which the breakdown of food takes place. Then energy, in breathing energy is not released, and in cellular respiration energy is released. And occurrence in breathing, it occurs outside the cell, and cellular respiration it occurs inside the cell. And enzymes are not involved in breathing, and enzymes are involved at certain stages of respiration. Now let us discuss about respiration in other animals. Respiration in lower organisms like amoeba and paramecium takes place by diffusion through cell membrane. So in this you can see in this diagram, in amoeba and paramecium, exchange of gases takes place with the help of their diffusion from their cell membranes. Now next is respiration in insects. Insects like grasshoppers and cockroaches, they have a respiratory system which consists of network of thin air tubes called trachea. These air tubes they spread into the whole body and they have tiny openings called spiracles. These spiracles are present on the sides of their body, and oxygen rich air enters the body through spiracles, and then this air goes to trachea and diffuses into the body tissues and reaches every cell of the body. And this oxygen is used to break down the food, and energy is released and carbon dioxide is released. So this carbon dioxide from the cells goes to tracheal tubes or trachea and then moves out of the body through spiracles. So this is how insects respire. Now next is respiration in earthworms and frogs. Earthworms breathe through their body surface or their moist skin, and frogs breathe through lungs as well as their moist skin. We know that frogs, they are amphibians, so when they are on land they breathe through their lungs, and when they are in water then they breathe through their moist skin. Now next is respiration in fish. We all know that fishes have gills to breathe in water. So fishes have special organs of breathing called gills, and the fish breathes by taking in water through its mouth and then it sends it to the gills, and these gills are well supplied with blood vessels, and the blood vessels of the gills extract dissolved oxygen from this water and then send it to all parts of the body, and then carbon dioxide is brought back by the blood vessels into the gills, and then from the gills it is expelled out into the water. So this is how fishes breathe or respire with the help of their gills. Now next is respiration in plants. We know that plants are also living things. That means they also respire. So respiration also takes place in plants, and plants they also need respiration for their survival. They need energy for their survival. So to get this energy, they respire, and the plants get energy by the process of respiration, in which glucose breaks down into the presence of oxygen to form carbon dioxide and water with the release of energy. So we can say plants also respire, or respiration also takes place in plants, and food means glucose breaks down into carbon dioxide, water, and energy is released. So how plants respire? We have already studied in previous chapters and in previous classes that plants have stomata on their leaves. So they have tiny pores called stomata on their leaves, and exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place with the help of these stomata. So you can see in this diagram, this diagram is showing closed stomata and open stomata. So this is through these stomata, these tiny pores, plants take in oxygen and they also respire. Plants also respire with the help of roots and woody stems. Like all other living cells of the plants, the root cells also need oxygen to generate energy. And the roots of the plant, they have very large number of tiny hair on them, and these tiny hair are called root hair. You can see root hair in this picture, in this diagram. So air is, we know that air is present in particles of the soil. So these root hair, when which are in contact with the soil particles, these oxygen from the air diffuses into these root hairs and reaches all the cells of the roots. So where it is utilized in respiration. So carbon dioxide produced during respiration goes out through the root hair by the process of diffusion. So we can say oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange of these two gases takes place through these root hairs. Now next is woody stems. We know that the stems of herbs, they have stomata for exchange of gases, means exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. And the hard and woody stems of big plants and trees, they have lenticels. Now what are these lenticels? Lenticel is a tiny opening on the bark where the cells are loosely packed and have intercellular spaces allowing the exchange of gases. So exchange of gases takes place through these lenticels also. Okay, so this was how plants respire. So in this chapter we studied about respiration in human beings, respiration in animals, and respiration in plants. I hope you have understood the topics. Thank you.